We are the One Story Podcast. We believe in the power of a story. Everyone has a story, and that story is meaningful. Your story can make a difference. Your story can inspire others. Your story is important. At the same time, ultimately, everyone's story is a part of one story, the big God story.
It's not what you said. You're not who you said you were. When are you alone? When will you come back home?
Hello. This is the One Story Podcast. My name is Drew, and I'm with Mr. Isaac LeBrija.
What's up, player?
We are here. I always laugh after whatever you say, like a little giggle.
It's hilarious.
Hilarious. This is episode. This is episode 30. Thanks for tuning in once again. We're so thankful that this is even a thing and that people even listen to this. The plays, the downloads. We see the stats. It's all across the board.
It's growing, so it is exciting.
It is, and we're just so thankful that you guys are taking the time to let us come on here and share people's stories. And that's what it is. Like, it's easy to promote because it doesn't feel so much like self-promotion because it's not like you and I, or it's not me.
It says in the Bible not to do that.
Well, just, I don't feel like I'm having to prop myself up. It's like, hey, listen to this podcast because you get to hear people's stories.
And you don't know this, but I have another podcast where I just self-promote.
Oh, it's just you. The LeBrija podcast. Me.
People are probably searching for it now.
Yeah, I want to hear that. So thanks. On that note, with the listening, and we just ask that you guys would take the time, if you listen on iTunes, to rate the show, and leave a review.
Yeah.
We've had some ratings on there, and there's also been one review, and so we'd like to thank Kara K Aloha.
It's got to be one. It's got to be
well, it was actually for on the title it says Shackles, so I think it had to be for George.
Oh, okay.
My Uncle George's show, because his was the Shackles.
I thought it was Natasha.
Well, yeah, it could be Aloha. But whoever, because we don't know the name. It's just that call name or whatever it is.
Nonetheless, thank you so much for reviewing. It helps. What does it help?
Give us like visibility on iTunes. So the more ratings and reviews, then the more it pops up on people's searches or whatever the case may be. So this thing spreads not just by word of mouth and social media, which is great, and it has been doing that. But
because we have people that listen all over the world, but we would like wherever God's word could reach.
Yeah.
If either people, podcasting's like a thing now. People are looking for a good Christian podcast. I think this is, the greatest, of all time.
Doesn't get much better than this, everyone. So yeah, leave a review and we'll give you a shout out.
I don't have an ego.
Leave a review and we'll give you a shout out on the show. If you want to put your name on there, we'll say your name, or it could just be that. I think that's probably like your iTunes. Username or whatever it is. So, but thank you for that review. We appreciate it. We appreciate all you guys that are listening. Look us up on Facebook, One Story Podcast. On Instagram, same One Story Podcast. You can email us if you want to share your story. We want to hear who you are out there. Even if you don't want to come on the show and share your story, let us know. Write us a message, direct message. Let us know how this thing is, what it's doing for you in your own life. Is it, is it stirring something up? Is it encouraging you? Do you have more questions?
Because that encourages us.
Yeah.
To know that this is reaching people and people are hearing the kind of the message or whatever it is that God might be speaking through people's stories.
Yep.
If we've had people tell us before, like, oh, this is kind of opening a new door or that really kind of, got my, kind of stepped up my faith or whatever. And I'm going to go, I've had a coworker be like, oh, I want to go to church, I'm like, oh, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like, what do you say to that? You're like, from our show, it's just like, dang. So it's
great.
Let us know, so kind of gives us, fuel and energy to keep
going, pushing on,
yeah.
keeping on. So today, or what is today while you're listening to this, we have Waynna LeBrija on.
My wifey.
Isaac's wifey, and another great show. She shares, some of her life story, and also highlights what she's doing currently now with her blog, and hopefully growing into whatever that's going to look like in terms of the outreach that she's doing. She talks about the women's shelter that she provided a blessing for them there, and was able to give a blessing to a mom for funeral for one of her small kids. Yeah,
so I'd ask that you just go look up her website and support her, because it's ultimately supporting some other cause.
Yeah,
and she'll talk about that on her website and let people know what she's doing. So.
Yeah, we'll put a link down below in the show notes to directly go to her website, but look it up, follow her blog, support the cause. It's a good thing.
So, it's a good story. So
yeah, here we go. Here's Waynna LeBrija. Okay, so we're here with Waynna LeBrija.
Hey.
What's up, mama?
How you doing today?
I'm well, thanks.
A nice fresh morning, starting off a little earlier than usual.
This is morning radio, Drew.
Oh, that's right.
So the drive time now is 7:24, 24 after the hour.
Traffic on the 10s.
Okay, 2 warnings. I'm not funny like these two, and my coffee hasn't kicked in yet, so
you crack me up all the time.
That was a good joke.
You are funny, because some of the things you say, I'm like, you really mean that. You really feel that way.
First coffee, then talkie.
Exactly.
No, what's the slogan?
My next shirt.
Do not talkie before. What is it? Do not talkie before coffee.
That's it.
Okay. Okay.
I think that one might be taken. You have to look at that. I saw it on a bumper sticker once.
Did you?
No.
You stole that idea, babe.
Okay, so we have Waynna, Isaac's wife, on the show.
It's mi esposa.
See, and she's gonna come on and share her story of, just her life, her testimony, and we're excited to hear it. I'm excited to hear it, and I think we should just get right into it.
Okay, sounds good. I am Waynna, and my name originated from some grandparents of mine. I am half Hispanic and half cowgirl, or at least I like to say. I was born in Oklahoma. My mother is a Mexican immigrant, and grandfather's a Korean War veteran. You could really place us all over the map, and then you'd get me. But I guess you can say my testimony started when I was a little girl. I was born in the church. I remember the first time we missed a Sunday, I was like, oh my gosh, like something's not right. Like we missed a Sunday. And my parents were laughing, like they literally laughed and were like, it's okay. Like, we'll be okay. And I'm like, I don't think we will, I was just that little girl that was always like trying to do good, know?
Yeah. Was your mom, was it Santa, or was it David that got you that like
that was kind of the end of my story, babe. Thanks for
just growing up in the church, like, well, because your dad grew up.
He was my grandfather, who wasn't he didn't really behave the way that he was supposed to as a pastor's kid. He was a pastor's kid. Yeah.
Waylon?
Yep. No. Yeah. Buell Waylon. We called him Grandpa Nick because Nichols. But
he was a PK.
He was a PK.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then he went to the war, and he actually got a couple of Purple Hearts. Or I don't know. Wow. Do you get one or do you get two? I'm not really sure how that works.
You can get multiple.
Okay.
But that's a big deel.
Yeah, and I think that's.
I just started thinking of Forrest Gump. Something bit me.
I am not going to have any. I am not going to have any comebacks to these jokes because, like I said, I don't even know how to respond. But I'm glad that these guys are funny because it's actually calming me down a little bit. I was nervous and now I'm A-okay.
Okay, it's best to just block us out.
Yeah.
No, I love it
for sure. Just do what you do at home. Just block me out.
When I'm listening to your guys' podcast, I'm like laughing hysterically, and the kids are like, "What's so funny, mommy?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like they're just funny." So.
Well, real quick, I don't want to throw you off, but what's your favorite podcast?
I think Christian Nordhoff.
Oh, no. He doesn't have a podcast. It's a One Story podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here, let's redo this.
Oh, I thought you meant my favorite episode.
It's Christian Nordhoff?
It's between that one and...
I really liked Christian's too.
What's our other friend? Richard Victorian.
Oh, yeah, I like Richard's too.
He's got a good story.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a
no, I like them all.
Yeah.
I like...
They're all my favorite.
Yeah. They're like my little kids.
I like Scott's. I like... I think... I love them all. I don't think you guys have had one where I'm not like, oh my gosh, that was so boring. Like, but anyways, so my grandfather, he was an extremely hard worker. My grandma was, she raised 6 boys, so she deserves a trophy.
Dang.
She deserves a...
Bev. Shout out to Beverly.
Yeah, a pink heart just for that. I mean...
a pink heart?
I mean, what would you call that?
No, that's good.
She raised 6 girls and 1 boy. I mean, I'm sorry, 6 boys and 1 girl. And
here's a quick...
I am her namesake, my Aunt Waynna.
A quick Beverly story. When Beverly was on her deathbed, like, she was... going blind, like she was dying, right?
She was a little incoherent.
And that's the only grandparent that I knew. I didn't know your grandpa. He already had passed. But when she was on her deathbed, we were like saying bye to her or whatever, right? And then she goes, Isaac, is that you? Because she couldn't see me, but she kind of could. And I go, yeah, that's me, Bev. And she goes, Isaac, you go make an honest woman out of her. It was when we were still dating.
Wow.
She's like, she's a sweet girl, like she said that. She's make an honest woman out of her. And I was like, okay, Bev, I will.
Yeah.
And you did.
I did.
So just
that was only because your grandma, babe.
We're on a time crunch. Hello.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So a little bit more history about my grandparents. My grandma, she and my grandpa met when they were 13 and they dated ever since. So she was with him when he went to war and everything. Mm-hmm. And then he became a pipeline welder when he came back. And so their story goes on the road from the time that they had their first kid to the time that, I even kind of remember my grandpa pipeline welding. But, and then, so they're just hardworking, they live everywhere from Wisconsin to California, like
and everywhere
New
between.
York. Yeah, my dad has lived in probably every state you can, all 50 states. Mm-hmm. And my mom comes from Mexico when she's 13 and she meets my dad at 15. She gets married at 16 and she has my sister at 17. So I always like to say that they are polar opposites, but they were each other's salvation because, they were kind of just like trying to get out of these big families and, probably trying to just find themselves.
What I think is interesting about that too, when they met, they couldn't really speak. They couldn't even really communicate, right?
Oh yeah, no, he jokes a lot. My dad, he's a big time jokester, and he used to say, yeah, your mom came up to me one day and she was like, oh, me amo Santa, and IGAA, which is Girls Athletic Association, and he said that that's all she would tell him, and he was like, okay, sold. Like, and they actually got, I think it's how prom worked back then, but you didn't get to pick your date. Like, you kind of just got set up and sent with whoever.
Really?
That's kind of from my understanding, that's how it worked at their high school. They went to Lennox, and so they got set up at prom, and that was it. Like, they just started dating after that, and then things, kind of took off quickly. But I love the story of my mom and dad because it was almost like a movie. Like, he took her to Alaska and he couldn't on the Alaskan pipeline, and he would cut firewood when the pipeline was shut down, and just to support her. And like, that's how I want to remember my dad, just because like things kind of changed. And my sister even remembers my dad in such a different light. Like, we're 10 years apart, so they had her when they were 17 and then they had me later in their 20s. But you could tell me my dad was smarter than the president of the United States and I would have believed you. Like, I see the way that my daughter looks at Isaac, and I just think like, I get that. Like, I felt that way at one point in my life. And I guess where things changed, my dad had like a company. He had stopped pipeline welding when I was like 2 or 3 years old, and he started a plumbing company in Corona, and it actually took off like really quickly. Like, so fast that he couldn't even keep up with the demand. He was a really salesy person, like really, really easy to talk to. And anyway, he had repiped like a apartment complex in Yorba Linda, and apparently that's where things kind of changed. Somebody offered him, I think, some coke or something to stay awake because, you know, he had a young family, or younger, you know. My sister and I were 10 years apart, but I was probably 5 or 6 years old when this happened. And, you know, just to stay awake, just to do what dads are supposed to do. And that is provide and have the house and have the cars and have everything that American culture is supposed to, tells you you're supposed to have. But I do remember that no matter what, like, they kept us in church, and he would always, you know, that was like our family. Outside of our family was like our church family always. And it was kind of inconsistent with the churches that they took us to. Like sometimes it'd be Baptist and sometimes it'd be, you know, solely or Spanish speaking. And it was just kind of like off the map. Like as much as my dad was my hero, like I always noticed something was kind of off, you know, like he was impulsive, and we'd go to church and then he'd take us all to Disneyland afterward, you know. And like, but those are the memories as a kid, like you want to remember.
Is sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have passes back then, but like
it's funny when we'll be getting out for church, we'll be so tired. She's like, oh, when we were growing up, we'd be on our way to Big Bear, like after church
in like high heels in the snow.
You said your mom would be in her church dress and high heels, like up
it
at
was
Mount
just
Baldy.
Whatever dad felt like. But I get it though. Like he needed an escape from this life that he had created, you know. And he was always so hardworking that I think sometimes the work just became, he like absorbed himself in it, because it, you know, work can become an addiction like anything else.
Right.
But anyways, so he started taking off for like days at a time, and everybody was confused. Like his workers were confused, my mom was confused. And as he would take off, he would come back and like things wouldn't be right. Like there would be less money and there would be less tools and there would be, you know, all this like just things weren't making sense. Like, and then things just started to go downhill, like after he would start taking off more and more. And, you know, people would come up with things like, oh, yeah, I saw him downtown at the bar. And like people were saying that they saw him places and we had no idea. We were like, where is this man? Yeah, like for days at a time. And we're like, OK, is he having, well, I was still little. I was like 8 or 9 years old when this started happening. But, you know, my mom is like, is he having an affair? Like, what is going on here? Well, I remember it distinctly. This is like one of my youngest memories of things just not making sense. We were driving. I think it was me, my mom, and my brother, because my sister was out of the house at this time. And we were driving looking for him. I think it was late at night. It was probably like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And sure enough, we found him. Like he was at a gas station. And he had his shirt unbuttoned. I remember it like so distinctly. Like I can almost see his face. And he goes into the 7-Eleven. We kind of sit back. We're like parked at the back of the gas station, and where he couldn't see us. And then he gets back in his truck and he takes off. And it's one of the work trucks, and we follow him, and it's like to this shady neighborhood in Moreno Valley. And he gets out of the car. We're still kind of sitting back just to kind of see what happens. And it's, you know, this big old guy like opens the door and lets him in. And then my mom, she leaves us in the car. And she's like, get down, do not pop your heads up. If you pop your heads up, you know, whatever. And we're like, okay, like we're scared out of our minds, and we're just like, this is kind of fun, but like we're scared. And our dad's in there, and we want him, you know, we want him to come out, we want to take him home, you know. So it's like all these emotions are just like circulating through the car. And
how old were you?
I was like 9. I think I was 9. And so she goes and she knocks on the door, like even though she had seen that there was like this scary guy, you know, that had opened the door for him. And she's like, we were so close you could hear her. She was like, is David here? And he's like, David, like, you know, the guy was like shaking his head like, I have no idea who you are. I have no idea who you're asking for. And she's like, yeah, is David here? And he's like, no. And he closes the door on her face, and then she bangs on the door like she's angry, you know. And she's like, I saw him. And this,
you don't want to make Santa angry.
Oh yeah, no. Anyway, so not to cut you off, babe.
No, keep on going. I'm sorry.
And so anyways, my dad opens the door again, and she's like, "You're coming home with me right now, like I don't care." And he's like, okay, you know, like shaking his head. And turns out he was at a crack house. And we were just like, I mean, I didn't know it at the time. They didn't explain anything to us back then.
And you're still young.
What'd you think? Like, what'd you think he was doing?
I knew, like, I kind of just knew. Like, I was one of those kids that, like, I don't know, like, my intuition was there. And, like, even though, you know, we had Red Ribbon Week at school. So, like, he came home and I was just like, okay, I get it. Like, you know, my dad is doing things he shouldn't be doing. And I think these kinds of things lead to no good, you know, because we had heard about it. And
did that change the way you thought of him at that time?
No,
because you had always told me that you're his hero.
He was my hero. Yeah, even until, like, I mean, even the way I talk about him now, like, I still defend the person that he is, because
he was a good guy. He for sure.
I really think that we are who God made us to be, and addictions and, like, the things that we carry change.
I think my dad said it the best about your dad. He goes, I don't know what it is about him. I just like him. And I think that can go, like, that could be said by anybody who met David.
Yeah, and, like, you know, everybody's always told me, like, you look like your mom, you're just like your mom. And I always would say, like, gosh, I want to be like my dad. Like, I want to look like my dad, even in the midst of his struggles, you know? And, like, I think my story kind of starts there and ends there because it kind of, like, laid the foundation for the rest of my life. And that was that things aren't wrapped in pretty little bows for everyone, you know? Right. And even though somebody struggled so apparent on the outside because he lost everything and because we were forced to move into my grandma's 1-bedroom apartment, and, you know, the list goes on. He's been, you know,
which was a big thing because he had a pretty big company at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick's Plumbing you guys had, like, a little farm and
2
houses. He had like a fleet of, like, 20 trucks, like, of 20 plumbers, and it kind
of just all went away.
Oh, quickly. Yeah. Like I mean, I don't know how long it took him to build that. I mean, I'm assuming it was, like, somewhere around 10 years, a little bit less than 10 years, but the fall happened so fast that it's like, that's kind of goes along with, like, you know, I was reading a devotion recently, and it was like, you got to pick your pain. And it was saying, like, let's just use the example of budgeting. Like, you budget, and that's painful. It's painful to see the things that you can't afford, and you know, to see just pain. You have to take the time to do it. There's a lot that goes. Something. Yeah, it's painful.
Right. Yeah.
But then you don't budget, and what's the outcome? It's painful. You know, it can be really painful when you can't pay your rent because you overspent by $500 or whatever it is.
Or you have this credit card debt, or all this stuff piling up. Yeah.
And it was saying, like, pick your pain, and, you know, and I can see that with, like, even, you know, with me, like, being on my phone for an hour and then seeing the laundry pile up or whatever it is, like, you know, I've picked my pain at that point, you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is that, like, yeah, it was painful for him to build that business and to go through the stress and to, you know, but then it was also painful to choose, you know, the drugs or the alcohol or whatever it was that he was choosing, and that pain looked a lot worse for his family, you know. But I can't say that.
What did it look like for you, like, going through all that? Like, what were some of the things that you guys went through during that time?
Oh, it was horrible. I just remember, like, you know, we were on our way to SeaWorld one day, and I just remember my mom being around a lot more after that happened. Like, before, she had been working at the company, and, you know, like, she had been busy with my dad a lot. And then, like, after that, I don't think she really knew where to take it, because the core of our family, of the business, of everything.
Well, even
was
for her, that was her life was him, because they had been married since she was 16. You know,
yeah.
like,
I think back.
She was you're a kid and you're you know you're married to this guy, and now all this stuff
is crashing down.
Yeah, I think back on the decisions that she made, and sometimes I get angry, but then I think I probably would have done the same thing, and that was just try and make it work, you know, for the family. Like she loved him, and I can't imagine how that would feel if like Isaac took off on me or something, you know. But it's just,
I'm not going anywhere, babe.
I know, it's just hard
to
think about what she went through.
Right.
Anyways, so I guess let's move on to the next season of my life. But I think that laid the foundation, because I don't think I would have been as passionate about things. I mean, there was a lot even that I felt like I struggled with, as far as like being mean to him and saying things that I wish I wouldn't have and stuff like that. Like, you're going to look back and see that situation and feel guilty about it. You know, it's just it's kind of just the normal pains of having somebody in your family that struggles with substance abuse. But, I think for me, like,
but I think your guys' struggle was gnarly, because you saw it. I mean, financially. I mean, your lives. You guys were, like you said, you guys lost everything. I mean, you ended up at your grandma's house. Your dad was gone. Your parents separated, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a period of time where you didn't see him for.
Oh yeah, and when I
like what, it was 2 years, you said?
Yeah, for 2 years, and when he came back, he came back, and it was really sad, because I missed him, and I was a daddy's girl. Like, I know this is kind of weird, but like, he never spanked me, and so I felt safe with him. Like, I never felt like I couldn't approach him or anything like that. But anyways, that's good to lead into the next season, because he was gone, he was sober, and my mom was kind of like, you need to go fix yourself, and then you can come back and we'll do this again, you know. And when he left, apparently he had said he was sober for 2 years, and you know, he had gone to Victory Outreach, and he had I don't know.
Is that how you guys reconnected? Was he in Victory?
He came with some pastors from Victory Outreach to our church. And my mom kind of turned him away. So I don't remember exactly what happened, but anyways, I would go and see him in jail, and I would just like I would just turn into a ball of tears. Like, it was horrible. It was sad, you know. I look back and I don't see me, I see a little girl who needed her dad.
For sure.
And it was just sad. Like, I see the relationship that Kaya has with you, you know, and I think like what's going to be her ticket to salvation, you know, because for me, mine has always been the hard things that have happened in my life, because, you know, losing my dad at 9 years old, because essentially that's what happened. Like, I lost who I knew as a father. And then, you know, fast forward, we lost Stella, you know, like, it in a weird way, like, I questioned my salvation a lot with, you know, because they'd tell me to pray, and I would pray. I'd pray for Stella to get healed when I was little. I'd pray for my dad to get healed, you know, heal him. And I would even like get on my knees, because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not doing it right. Like, maybe, you know, maybe prayer looks different, and maybe if you do it a certain way, then, you know, it'll works. Happen better. Right, yeah. Like, yeah.
Just some kind of magical recipe for prayer, you know?
Yeah. And like, when he would take off, like, I'd get to my knees and I'd be like, okay, I think I'm doing it right. Like, this is going to be the time. Like, this is going to be it, you know? And unfortunately, reconciliation with my dad didn't happen until a couple months before my birthday, my 30th birthday. So you could really say that all that time was like just teeter-tottering between, you know, him coming into my life and then him going out of my life. And it was just this constant back and forth where I would believe and I would say, okay, Lord, like this is it. You know, I'm 23, I'm getting married. This has to be it. Like finally my dad is going to be the grandpa that I want him to be, you know, and it never looked the way that I wanted it to look, you know? Mm-hmm. And then, so I think that's like, even now, you know, sometimes I'm like, why? And I have no clear answer to that, you know, but like my situation compared to some of the people that you guys have had on, like, you know, I hear about like rape victims and stuff like that. And I think, oh my gosh, like mine is a walk in the park compared to, you know, type of. But
everyone's suffering is their suffering and their pain. You know,
that's true.
It's true. And we were talking about that, like, you know, it is good to put things in perspective, but I mean, your pain is real. And the things that you went through with your dad, like that, you can't discount that as, oh, it's nothing because someone else, you know, went through so much worse. Like that's something that you had to experience and you went through. Yeah. And it shaped you, but it doesn't discount, you know, how much pain was in that, you know?
No, that's true. But
and like, where was God during all this? Because while he was in and out of the house, your mom kind of went down a different path as well, right?
Yeah.
She kind of.
Well,
you want to talk about that a little bit? That'd be
sure. You know, I felt like we went to kind of like normal American churches. I mean, for lack of a better word, you know, churches that had a youth group and churches where the pastor had this family that you were just like, you know, kind of idolized because you're like, I want that when I get older. Mm-hmm. And then she kind of took us out of those churches and we started going to like Pentecostal churches and, you know, where they would kind of lay hands on you. And I think it was kind of desperation for all of us because we kind of, you know, we did what they told us to do too. We were young, but we wanted.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because Waynna tells me stories about being at these churches, and and it's just, I don't know, it's just funny because just the way from your perception, it's funny because they're talking about laying hands, but like people falling down,
you know, getting slain in the spirit,
it's real life, but like it was just like we would be at church for like 8 hours, you know, just being slain in the spirit or whatever,
marathon services,
and I mean when you're 13 and when you go to public school and you would never tell your friends that was the church that you went to, right. Or invite them even, you know what I mean? It was like a congregation of 20 and we would, you know, and I mean, mind you, these people cared for us and they took care of us and, you know, I don't doubt that.
And that's the way they experienced God. That's what I when I laugh, but because it's just of what Wayne has told me, I asked you like what happened when they touched you, and she was like nothing. She's like, I would want to faint, but like I couldn't.
But maybe nothing happened because I was 13 and I was being strong-willed, and I was like, I am not gonna fall. I'm not gonna fall. I'm not gonna fall. You know what I mean?
She goes. One time I was just too tired, so I fell down just so I could lay down.
It was already the 6th hour of service.
Well, we would go underneath the chairs, and we would just like, you know, we didn't have iPads or phones or anything back then, so we would just like talk and, you know, just we'd go to 7-Eleven, like we'd take breaks at 7-Eleven, but
so how did that shape in that early age, how did that form your relationship with God though? What did it look like to you, especially with all the chaos that was happening and your mom? That's a good
question. I think that's where my like sociological desire to learn kind of sparked, because I realized God is not seen in one way by one person. You know, like Assemblies of God, you can kind of predict what God is going to look like. And if you're only ever exposed to that God, you don't realize that there's this God like that, you know, he rules the universe and people experience him so differently, you know, like in different
well, it's all from the perspective,
different environments, different countries,
but it's good to point out cultures. That God doesn't change. God is who he is. It's just certain people experience him in different settings, I guess, or styles.
It's all perspective too. It's like, what city you're living in, you know, what country you're living in, you know, what culture. Neighborhood, you know, God is seen through that perspective, through that view, you know, that, and so for you, what did it look like? What was that perception?
It looked like God could be wherever you are. Like you don't you could be in church or out of church or at a Pentecostal church or at an Assemblies of God church, and he will meet you, you know? Like I feel like God has met me in places. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about, was how I feel like I've always been pursued. And that's also something, though, that I have a hard time with, because I'm like, is everybody pursued, or has it just been me? Because, you know, like, I'll be, you know, I'll just have such, like, such thinking that's just so mindless, you know, like, I can't do this because of this. And, you know, that happened to me one time. And just to explain what I'm talking about, at Vanguard, you know, the professors are very much so in tune with God. Like, these people are Christian people, you know. And I told her, I'm like, I have 2 small kids. Like, I'm struggling. I went to my professor because I couldn't turn in an assignment. And I was like, you know, I'm barely holding on to a C in this class. And this is hard for me. And she looked at me, and I thought her response was going to be something like, okay, drop the class. And she was like, have you prayed? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, actually I haven't. And she's like,
it's a good idea.
Yeah. And she's like, go home. Like, I'm going to let you skip this class. She's like, and read all the affirmation scriptures you can come up with. And she's like, because I know you feel like you can't do this. She's like, but you can. And that was, God was meeting me, because had I gone to Cal State Fullerton, or, you know, those colleges are amazing, it wasn't what I needed at that season of my life, having kids, to know, you know, that, like, you know, I feel like he met me where I was at. Right, and those are like little examples, but
where was he when we met?
Well, that's a good question.
Dang, I have all the hard hitting ones today, huh?
No, I think with you, like, I didn't know that what our future looked like, and, like, I would pray about it. But I think for
I'm sure you didn't even think that we had it. I mean, when we met at, I've talked about it, we met at a house party. I mean, you know,
babe,
things got hot.
Babe, I saw how bad you were, and I was like, I need the Lord.
You drew closer to God.
Yeah. No, really though. Like,
I can't end up like that.
I have that effect on people.
I thought I was bad, like, you know, in my early 20s, when good just wasn't doing anything for me.
We were teenagers when we met, though.
Yeah. Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit, and then I'll go into our relationship. But so I was like a good kid, I feel like, all my life. Like, you know, teachers would tell me, like, oh, you're just such a good kid, you know? And I think it was safe for me, and that's why I did it. I don't think I was good because I knew I was being good, you know? It just, like, it was safe. You were good, you got good grades, or you got a good, you know, whatever. And so when I realized good wasn't doing me any good, you know, like, it wasn't helping my at-home situation, and friends, people that had a lot of friends, it looked like that was, you know,
they were having fun.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't doing good for them, but they were having a good old time, and they had friends. And you know, that's when I realized that, like, okay, maybe this good thing maybe it might look a little different if I, like, play on the edge a little bit, you know. At least I'll be laughing and enjoying my life instead of, like,
high school, right?
Yeah, this is like high school. So I met you when I was 19, so not long after I graduated high school. But, you know, I started hanging out with you, and, like, I fell in love with you, like, right away. Like, I'm not gonna lie. You could have told me that I could have.
For us both. It was crazy love.
No, I really, though, I thought you walked on water. Like, I was like, this guy is everything I'm not, and I want all that he has to offer. But I mean, that quickly changed when I realized that, like, all you were about was, like, partying and, you know, and having a good time. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, what does this look like in 2 years or 4 years? And that good girl kind of started, you know, like, rattling my inner soul, or maybe it was the Holy Spirit. And that's when I think I had started to tell you. I mean, I only let it go, like, what, a year or two. And I was like,
it was a couple of years before you even brought up church, and you're like, I want to go to church. I was like, oh, okay. Like, let's go to church. Because I had grown up in the Catholic church. So
I just thought, I was ready to be good again.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think...
Did you also see, I mean, Isaac's lifestyle as maybe something that, like, you went through with your dad? Or you feared...
Totally.
Like, it could get down that road.
Those are the times where I think it hit me the most. Like sometimes we can, it was still early on in my Christian walk, which I've talked about, where, it was not like, oh, I just changed in one day. It was 10 years of changing. But she would be like, I can't believe I married my dad. And be like, oh, because I knew who her dad was.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, and those are the times where I'd have to like kind of take a step back, like, what am I doing? And it was tough.
So you did have those
all the time. I used to tell him all the time, I'd be like, this life leads to nowhere good. Like, look at my dad. Isaac met my dad when he had just gotten out of jail. He even had his jail pants still on, and so that was like, look at this plus this equals this,
Right,
like you shouldn't be doing this. And I had gotten a full-time job, and I was just like, yeah, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to graduate college and do all of this stuff and get back to church. And I was like, I don't think we can do this anymore. But he had broken up with me, so he kind of did the work that I needed.
This was like right after we started dating. I mean,
you talked about, you guys were already into it.
Yeah, no, it was like 2 years after we were dating.
It was not.
Oh my god.
That was like in the very beginning.
Okay, we'll have that conversation later. But
I don't want to.
No, but
we're
Isaac
married now.
Yeah, so Isaac is the polar opposite of who I am. I'm a dreamer. Like, I'll dream up 10 dreams in a matter of 45 minutes, and he'll be like, okay, let's move on with our lives. Like, dream, and unless I actually like put it to paper, then he will say, okay, you're serious about this, let's do it, mm-hmm. And he's a doer through and through, but he doesn't have the ability to dream big like I do. So I feel like that's where we find our common ground, is when he brings the doer part of life to the table, and I bring the dreamer part. Like, I'm always like, what are we gonna do in 5 years? And he's like, we have tomorrow? To eat dinner. And I'm like, no, like, I need to know, we need to write this down, and it's kind of like the planner part of me, where I'm very, very like, I feel like I'm not disciplined, but I require things to be on a schedule, and he's the one that like puts the schedule into place. Like, if I tell him like by 8:00 we need to be at the park, and by 11:00 we have to be home for a nap, like he'll be like, okay, didn't you say we had to be home by 11? Like, he won't put it into place, but he'll make sure it happens. So he's really good like that. And I think that's something that I noticed about him when we first started dating, was I saw this person who, like, I don't know, like, I just wanted to cultivate that. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing.
That was a
like,
project.
No, like, he's strong and
DIY.
He's outgoing. And I am the shyest person you'll ever meet. I mean, I take a lot of selfies and stuff, but only because of my Instagram and my blog. Like, I think she
didn't look me in the eye for like 6 months after we started dating.
And now I like look him straight in the eye, and he hates it. He's like, why can't you be the person that you were when we first met? But anyways,
it's horrible.
That part of my life was just, I didn't realize it, but I feel like God was grooming me to kind of step outside of my comfort zone. And I mean, motherhood requires you to step outside of your comfort zone, like, through and through. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that had I not met Isaac. I mean, he is like not safety.
That's just because I gave you babies, that's all.
No, like, it'll say do not drive past the cones, and he's driving past the cones. Like, it's just, he is not safe, and I am. I just yell out the window,
it's okay, I'm a podcaster.
What do I even say to that?
You don't have to say anything.
Okay.
Just do what Drew does and just act like I didn't say anything.
So I guess reconciliation for my life kind of, I mean, sometimes I have to trust that was reconciliation, because I have like a big trust issue, obviously, from things that happened in my childhood. But like,
so how did that end up, like, in the end? Like, what ended up happening to your dad? If you can kind of just briefly talk about
my
that.
dad never stopped being the person that he was. Like, he was crazy, but like, I'm the opposite of crazy, so I kind of embrace crazy, because it helps me to see that, like, life needs to be lived. And he we kept in contact. Like he was my dad, but this was the guy that he would leave hour-long voicemails on my phone just, months before, like, we found out he had cancer, and he'd just tell me all about his life. And he just talked so slowly, and like, he was my dad, regardless of, because we all struggle. I just feel like his was apparent. Like, he struggled on the outside. And even when my daughter Stella passed away, he went around to his job site and he collected money for her gravestone. And he sent me, like, I think he paid for half. Those things are kind of pricey, but he paid for half. He sent it in a card, and he would that's who my dad was. Like, I try to, it's true, like, when somebody passes away, I mean, unless they've wronged you in, like, the worst sense of, existence, like, you will only remember the good. And do I regret, like, cutting him off at certain times in my life? No. What I do regret are the things that I said to him. The anger, the way that, I think there's a scripture that says, like, that a fool, like, I don't know, something about, do you know it, Drew? Where, like, anger is for fools or something like that. And, like, I can look back at certain times in my life when the way that I talked to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, how foolish was I? Like, yeah, he was making certain decisions in his life, but I should have never, said things to him like that. Or
yeah, but I mean, it's those feelings that are coming out.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So how did you guys reconcile that relationship?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so
you found out that he had cancer.
Yes, he apparently was just,
and it was like, already.
Well, he didn't know he had it, but he had a cyst that grew, like, in the matter of a couple of days to the size of, like, a football underneath his arm, where he couldn't even put it down. Well, they did, like, emergency surgery, and they took it out, and that was when we saw him, was right after the surgery. And of course,
what happened?
Me, my brother, and my sister decided to take a road trip. We had taken road trips our whole entire lives. He took us to Oklahoma, like, twice a year in the car, a 3-day drive. And we just thought,
in the Cadillac.
We didn't know. I mean, me, my brother, and my sister were like, well, there's no other way to get to him. Like, we need to get in the car now, and we need to get, we need to get there.
Like, in a day.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to Oklahoma. We're driving out there.
Well, thankfully, my sister is a very much like Isaac. She's a doer. So she's like, I got the rental car. I got the this. I got the that. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Yeah. And she's like, we're leaving tomorrow, and you're coming or you're not, Right. And I was like, no, like, this is it. Like, this, I'm coming. But I still, at that point, I still prayed, and I still believed that, like, God would heal him. And, like, I think that's something that, like, I'm not able to wrap my head around, is, like, why God never answered my prayers of healing, and maybe, like, I haven't thought about, I'm sure that there's a million other times that I prayed and, like, my prayers were answered, but I think the healing took place, like, with our relationship more so than, like, in his body, you know what I mean? And he was still completely coherent when we got to him. Like, he had just gotten off a job site. Like, he was still very much so the dad that, like, I had remembered, from, like, the time I was little. Like, even though he abused his body or whatever with alcohol, like, that man, I don't know, he was just like,
he liked to laugh. Like, he liked to talk and laugh and tell stories. And then that's what happened on your trip, right? You guys did.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, you kind of lived your whole life. Aside from the bad part, in a road trip. It was like a week-long road trip. So it was
you, your sister, and your brother, and you guys took the road trip. And where were you going? To Oklahoma?
Yeah.
And then, so that must have been a great time for you, the three of you guys, in whatever processing.
Well, they brought him back. So they went and picked him up and brought him back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then my sister, she's very, very good at everything, as far as, like, planning. And so she got him into a hospital, and she got him, he got chemo treatments and stuff like that, but it was the type of cancer, I don't know what type it is, but it doesn't heal. Like, no matter how much chemo, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. And so I think it was the chemo that essentially took him. But I had graduated a couple of months later, and like, I couldn't help but see at my graduation that, like, he was the one that took my mom to church. And that's something that she said, as he was on his deathbed. She's like, Waynna, like, had it not been for your dad, like, we wouldn't be in church. She's like, your dad found a Baptist church, when we lived in the middle of Oklahoma, when he was on a job site, and he took us to church. And I can't help but think legacy. Like, that's what, when Isaac, told me, like, do you want to come on the podcast? And I was like, okay, like, what's it going to be about? And I was like, I have this desire to talk to moms. And the reason being is because we have dads don't get it. Like, we stress about things that dads, you guys maybe not even pick up on, we're thinking like, are they going to have anxiety? Like, are they getting a diaper rash? Like, our minds are just going a million miles a second. And I have this thing where, like, what is it? Like, what am I here for? And it kind of happened like a couple of years ago, like after I was fighting postpartum, and I was like, okay, I'm here for my legacy. And no matter, like, nothing else matters at this point, and like, I mean, you could say that I take some extra time to blog and stuff like that, but I really feel that, like, all moms should have something to call their own. Just don't wrap yourself up in it, because it's easy, for that to happen, like, to get, this feels much better than parenting. I got to do this more, and I got to find a babysitter to do this more. And it's just like, no, like, I don't think that that's what my goal is. I mean, that could be the goal for some moms, but for me, it's just to remind ourselves that, like, our gap between, like, our kids and who they're gonna become and who we are is God's grace, because we are flawed people raising flawed people. And I say that a lot. And so, like, I've gone on this mission to talk about grace. And the reason being is because as we were moving yesterday, we moved apartments.
By the way, babe, killed it.
Oh, that's why I'm barely hanging on right now. But as I was moving, the heavy boxes were just, I think I saw white a few times. And I was thinking, like, this is what it feels like. That scripture that it comes to mind a lot about taking up your cross. And this is what it feels like to carry a cross littered with our past, with guilt, with whatever it is. It feels heavy. You can't just take up your cross. You're carrying a cross that's full, and, like, God isn't asking you to do that. He's asking you to pick up your cross, which is life. Life in general is hard already. Like, and he's saying, follow me, and as I was on my way over here, I was listening to my devotion, and this scripture came up, and this is kind of how I want to end, but it talks about to focus on things that are eternal and
on the things unseen.
Yes. And it's let me see here. It says, so fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. And
what's the passage?
What verse? Or book?
2 Corinthians 4:18. And I tend to struggle a lot with what should I be doing with my life, and I don't know what to cut out a lot of times. Like, I'm like, but I need to volunteer, but I need to,
Which was the topic of a lot of our late night conversations. Like, what's our purpose? You were always like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
what's our purpose? And then, and like you were saying, you're a dreamer. Me, I'm like, yeah, we have to go to work tomorrow. Like,
yeah. And I will never stop asking myself that question, because that's the question that we were created to ask, like, why are we here? And
yeah, no, God gave us all of us a purpose.
Yeah.
We all have.
And although my dad struggled and it kind of seeped into our lives and our futures and stuff like that, like the best thing he could have done for us was to laugh, obviously, because, you know, laughing is medicine, but also to take my mom to church.
I'm so healthy.
That is why, babe. No, I completely agree with that. But it's take my mom to church, and had he not done that, I would not be here. And I think
I wouldn't be here. And I've talked about that before, about what's my purpose, and is to leave a legacy of not me, but of Jesus and his life. And when you said that, I kind of like, I didn't realize, because I said, because of you, I'm here.
Yeah.
But because of your dad, I'm here. And that's his legacy.
Right.
And if I'm able to ever to make disciples of Jesus, that's going to be because of your dad.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the legacy that he left.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
And like that scripture always comes to mind too, that says, it's Proverbs 16:9. It's man's heart plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And I mean, I'm a planner. So having the life that, you know, where my dad was there sometimes and not there sometimes, like that was really hard for me as a kid, you know, because I needed stability. I needed schedules, and none of that was, you know, none of that was there. And I think, okay, that's where life kind of happens, is when you realize you don't have control. Like even motherhood has just thrown me all kinds of curveballs, you know, like we'll be leaving the house and Uriah will be like, I have to use the restroom, and I'll be like, hopefully it's just pee. And he's like, no. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we have 10 minutes and, you know, and I plan this and then I just have to let it go. I have to say, okay, 10 minutes, we're late 10 minutes, no big deal. And that's like, I think where I'm being stretched in this season of my life is realizing that nothing is gonna be in my control with these kids. Like they'll grow up, I'll want them to be a firefighter, and they'll be a rock band person. Like, and it's
I don't
just
think
like,
it's in our genes. We're not musicians. The LeBrijas are not musicians.
anyways,
So where's God led you now? Like what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I have a blog, and this last month has been extremely busy. I turned 33. We moved. We went and saw your sister get married in Washington, which was amazing.
Shout
and
out
hard.
to Tosh. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And then you started a website.
Yes, I launched a website that I won. Like, and you know what? Like sometimes I tell God I can't and I won't and I just don't want to. And he tells me, you know what? Actually, like I want to help you fulfill the desires of your heart. You will, you know? And I'm just like, that's something where like I see God in his hand in my life. And like, it's easy for me to doubt, but then it becomes a choice. Like I have to choose, okay, do I believe this was by chance or do I believe that this was God, you know? And like, I mean, it becomes a choice at that point. Okay, I'm going to believe it's God because in his word, he says this, and this,
but
you know?
But stuff like winning that website, that was real. It was kind of blatant that, because you were, afterwards, you told me you're like, that day she was thinking like, how do I pay for this?
Yeah. Oh, I've been looking at the last 6 months. Like I want this website because I want to sell graphic tees and I need to look legitimate, you know? And that's what they say websites do. They just help with rapport. They don't necessarily send you all the business you've ever desired, but it looks like you have a footprint.
It's a necessary, you know, aspect of your whatever you're doing. You need business, blog.
Totally. Yeah. And I'm just here to encourage people, not just moms, because there's a whole demographic out there of women that are trying to have kids that can't, but just people, women in general. I think there's a movement right now of empowerment, like women empowering women. And I truly, truly believe that, you know, that's like, women are the core of everything. I mean, it's just, I don't know how to explain the way that I feel about what I want to tell people and like what people have done for me just by telling me, oh my gosh, you can do it, or go girl, you know, like it's so simple just to say like, oh, your kid had a meltdown. Oh my gosh, the same thing happened to me. It's like, wow, I thank you, because
What's the website, or how can people find that?
Oh, it's super easy. It's all graceup.blog. And if you head there, you can just head to any of the blog tabs up at the top. But I'm still
leads to your
transferring
website?
them over.
That's the domain for your website? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Allgraceup.blog.
Yeah.
And we'll put a link.
And
on
what is
the
it
show
that
notes.
your company's doing though?
Oh, okay. So we are selling graphic tees, and a portion of the proceeds will go towards just causes. I mean, there was last month or the
benevolent
month
stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, it's a total benevolence project. I felt like in the midst of my depression, that was the only thing that gave me a little bit of hope.
Hold on.
Stop.
Wait, where was I?
Isaac.
At work.
Oh, okay. No,
at the podcast, at the gym.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
You asked for it.
But it's okay. We were made to be the way that we are. I feel like anxiety helped me change diapers on time and wake up in the middle of the night when the baby was face down or whatever it was.
So what does your benevolence look like through your company? Like, what are you trying to do?
I'm not sure. I think I'm gonna reach out to
what do you mean not sure? You've done a couple of things already.
Oh, well, we did some mom bags for Christmas, which was like bags of goodies.
And that was the beginning of it, right?
Women.
What was it that led you to that? Real quick, if you can explain that.
It was me feeling like life was, like there was nothing past. I couldn't open a door after motherhood. Like, all the doors just seemed kind of like they were closing in on me and nothing was opening up, because you just try to leave the house with 3 small kids or even 1 small kid and you can't. Mm-hmm. There's these roadblocks and you're just like, all I want to do is get to the park. Like, I'm just trying to be a mom,
but everything else is just falling apart, trying to get there. Or one thing after the other.
Yeah. And then you forgot to pay a bill and you're like, oh my gosh, like, when am I going to remember that? Should I stop and pay a bill, or should I take the kids to the park? Or should I, and it's just like all these things are just, these thoughts and these things are just piling up. And
that was a part of the postpartum.
Yes.
During that time.
Yeah. And it was just feeling like you're not good enough. Your husband's laundry is never done all the way. You can't, you're in a hole and you're covered in dirty laundry. Like, you can't get out of it, and you're just like, it just starts to feel hopeless a little bit. And
so you went, and to counteract that, you decided to go and help bless.
I finally got out of the house, and I was sitting in my car, and I called a homeless shelter. I just Googled homeless shelters, and the first one that popped up, I called, and I'm like, do you need things? Like, what do you need? Can I help? And she's like, yeah, we need things. She's like, these women have nothing. They don't even have bus passes, And I'm like, do they have kids? She's like, some of them do. Like, the youngest is like a baby. And then we have like, I don't want to go into detail. But anyways, long story short with that, I was like, God, like, these people through the blog helped me. And there's nothing I can repay them. I cannot give them the names of these women. I cannot give them pictures. I cannot give them anything. And I was on my way home from the gym, and I was just feeling those feelings of, like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Why did you put this on my heart?
So you call this, well, you skipped a bunch of stuff. Because what was it that actually made you call the homeless shelter? What was it that sparked that?
I told you, babe. It was like all the doors closing in on me. It was this like feeling like I have it all, yet I don't have enough. Okay. And all was a house, these beautiful children, this husband that works so hard.
And then you thought there's women that don't have this.
I thought there has to be somebody that has it worse. Let's find out, And so,
and that's why you called the homeless shelter.
Yeah. I called, and she was like,
and then from that point, what'd you do? You started reaching out to people. That's when All Graced Up came about.
It took a little bit.
Well, that was the beginning of All Graced Up, right?
Well, I had a blog. I had written a couple of posts before I had Ella. And then after that, I started pursuing it more. But All Graced Up was established already. There was no benevolence tied to that.
There was no mission.
Right.
And then
exactly. There was no direction, And so anyways, I was like, what can I give these people? Like, they don't have even like a thank you, but from me, I don't know. I just felt those feelings of unworthiness.
These people are the people that donated stuff to fill
all
these bags that you had.
Women that donated,
all these other moms from church.
Single women. I mean, women that felt like in
People gave graciously. That was awesome.
Oh,
it was
my
awesome.
gosh, yes. And so anyways, I had, but I believed just by taking the first step, I bought the bags. I was like, these will be mom bags.
We'll fill them.
Yeah, and we'll fill them. You will fill them, Lord, because I can't, you know, and I called them bags of hope. And
that's where I came in. She's like, we need to fill these bags. I'm like, what bags?
Yeah,
Let's get the bags.
If it weren't for Isaac, I wouldn't have taken it to the next step because he was like encouraging me the whole way. But anyways, long story short, I was on my way home from the gym and I was like, what am I doing?
This is after you had filled the bags, gave it to them.
Yeah.
Because you didn't hear anything because it's all anonymous.
Yeah.
When you give the bags, it's not like you're going to see them and hand it to them or whatever.
Exactly. And we got to the door and the lady was like, thank you, bye. And she like shut the door on her face.
So it was kind of like this whole build up. It was like kind of like,
oh, dang.
And it was this whole, you know, because she was excited that they filled the bags. It was like 5 bags, filled them, you know, they were overfilled.
Overflowing, yeah.
And so she delivered them, they just took them and that was it. And so Waynna was like, all that work that she had put into it.
Well, it wasn't just my work. It was the work that everybody had put into it.
But it wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
Right. So anyways, I'm coming home from the gym. I'm like, you know what? I haven't checked the mail yet. Like, I'll go check the mail. And so I checked the mail and I saw like the envelope with their logo on it. And I was like, let me see what this is. And I thought it was inviting me to volunteer because like they need a lot of volunteers. So I'm like, oh, it's just a volunteer letter. So I opened it up and it was like just little tiny, notes. These bags were amazing, and it said their name, like Diana or whatever it was. And it was like, thank you so much, Merry Christmas. And it was Joanna or whatever. And it was like, and I was like, these women have names. And I was like crying and I was shaking.
And this is
I
right after you were just questioning God.
Yes. On the way home, literally seconds before. And
then you get this affirmation.
Yes. This page, just this blank page. And then it was like a receipt. So I was able to send the letter and I asked first. I was like, can I please send this to the people that donated? She's like, of course. So, and she said like, if you feel that way, like just let me know and I'll see if I can get an email or something, because I had to explain to her like, thank you for sending that out to me. Like it was exactly what I needed to go to do it again, but
yeah.
And, so a couple things. What did you think of God at that point when that happened? Because I'm sure you've had experiences with him all the time, but when God shows up like that.
Skeptic. I was skeptical. I was like, okay, this is by chance, but then I was like, okay, Lord, I believe it's you. Like it has to become a choice at a certain point because we are made to, we have everything we need. People that don't have anything, it's so easy for them to latch on to something like God because they need him for every next breath. You know what I mean? And here I am like, I have what I need, but I have to make a choice. Like, why do I keep asking? I don't know. I think it's just, that's how I was made. I'm a logical person. You have to show me the math, And so I think at a certain point it becomes a choice. And I have to think, okay, Lord, like...
But it's more than a choice. He's revealed himself to you.
Oh, many times. Yeah. I could go for another hour.
But what she's saying is she's choosing to believe that it's God, not just a chance or happenstance,
Right.
Not coincidence.
Like, okay, Lord, do you care about me that much? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because he says it over and over and over and over and over and over in his, I was even like playing with a hair. And I was like, gosh, like he, that scripture that says like he knows the number of hairs on your head. I was like, this is just, it's hard to fathom, but that's why it's hard to fathom because it's like, it's a God thing, and it just, it amazes me, but it also, it makes me think like, like why,
So where can people go find you and read your blog and just one more time and what they can do to help?
allgracestep.blog. We are currently out of stock, but as soon as the shirts come back in stock, you can purchase one, and then we'll have information on where your money's going next.
And you're just waiting for the next project?
Yep.
Okay. Well, babe, thank you so much for coming in and being with us.
Thank you guys.
Love you so
awesome.
much. We'll make out after the show's over.
I'll leave the room.
Thank you, Drew. But thank you for sharing your story, babe.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome.
So, we'll close this thing out. You know where to reach us or find us on our Instagram and Facebook. If you're listening on iTunes, go ahead and scroll down and give us a rate and review. Yeah.
With that, I just ask that you open your eyes, listen closely, soften your heart, and ask God to reveal himself to you.